is cold. The wind blows in from the sea, carrying with it the scent of salt water and the earthiness of wet wood. In the quiet of the Viking settlement, a fire flickers weakly in the center of the longhouse, casting warm light over the stone and timber walls. The room, still dark from the night, begins to wake slowly. The murmurs of men, women, and children stir as the day begins. Outside, the mist from the sea hangs thick in the air, the pale light of early morning just beginning to break through. In the heart of this settlement, the daily routine is already underway. The Vikings are awake, but today it's not the warriors, the ones with their weapons ready for a raid, who stand out. It's the men. The Viking men are preparing for the day not with the sharpness of a blade, but with the calm rituals of personal care. The Vikings, these fierce warriors, these seafarers, had a habit that might seem unusual to us today, but to them it was entirely natural. They bathed. Once a week, every Viking man would bathe. They didn't think twice about it. It was part of their rhythm. It wasn't some grand luxury or a matter of vanity. It was just life. The washing rituals were simple, involving cold, clear waters, probably from a nearby river, lake, or sea. Yet this act, done with care and regularity, set them apart. But the peculiar thing isn't just the bathing, it's the grooming. Viking men were meticulous about their appearance. They combed their hair. They took care in the way they dressed. They combed their beards, shaped them, and often braided them into intricate designs. These men didn't just raid and fight. They cared for their bodies, their hair, their faces, and you can imagine the reaction this might have caused. Imagine this: English priests, living in a time when the idea of personal hygiene might have involved little more than a quick rinse in cold water, sat writing furious letters. Their words were full of dismay, full of complaints. Why? Because Viking men were taking the time to care for themselves. Viking men, they said, were stealing the attention of English women. How? By bathing and combing their hair. These complaints, these bitter accusations, came in the form of letters to other priests, to church leaders. The tone was nearly frantic. How could this be happening? Men who cared about their hair. This was no ordinary sight. It was an act that both confused and threatened. These Viking men, dressed in furs, their hair combed and well kept, stood in stark contrast to the images the English had of the rough, unkempt northerners. Their idea of a barbarian wasn't one who cared for himself. But the Vikings, they were different, and so these letters, filled with complaints about Viking hygiene, became a part of medieval history, a snapshot of how ordinary Viking men were viewed by the world. But these letters don't just tell us about Viking life. They reveal something deeper about Vikings' identity. They show us that the Vikings weren't just known for their violence, their raids, or their fierce reputations. They were known for their culture, for their attention to the details of their daily lives. The Vikings were a people who took pride in more than just their power. They took pride in how they presented themselves to the world. Still, to call them clean and well-groomed doesn't mean their lives were without hardship. The Vikings were farmers, traders, fishermen, and craftsmen. They weren't only warriors. Their lives were filled with the mundane but necessary tasks that supported their families and communities. Farming in the cold, tough Scandinavian soil, working the long hours to make sure the longhouse was always full of food and warmth. In some ways, these men were just like us. They had to wake up early, work the land, fish the waters, and tend to the livestock, but they did it with an eye toward survival and comfort as best as they could. Life was often harsh. The cold could be biting, the winters long, and food often scarce. Still, the Vikings thrived in their own way. They learned to build sturdy houses with thick walls to block out the wind. They planted crops, harvested fish, and kept animals for food, wool, and leather. Life in Viking Scandinavia was not just about surviving raids and battles. It was about living every day in small but important ways to make the most of what the land provided. And the longhouses, where families lived together in close quarters, were at the heart of Viking life. These houses weren't just shelters, they were centers of family, community, and survival. Everyone in the longhouse had a role to play. Children learned from their parents. Men tended to the fields, made tools, or worked as traders or craftsmen. Women cooked, cared for the children, and looked after the home. Life inside these longhouses was about working together to keep the fire burning, both literally and figuratively, but there were moments of ease as well. The evenings after a day's hard work might have been spent around the fire, telling stories, the warm light of the hearth flickering as the family gathered close. After all, the Vikings were known for their stories. They had a rich tradition of storytelling, where each tale, each legend wove the past into the present. Tales of gods and monsters, of adventures and journeys passed down from generation to generation. These were people who found meaning in the small things, in the routines of life. Bathing once a week wasn't just for hygiene. It was a ritual, a way of setting the tone for the day ahead. Combing their hair was not about vanity. It was about taking time, appreciating the care they could give themselves in the midst of a hard, often brutal existence. The Viking world wasn't just about warriors. It was a world filled with ordinary people who found meaning in their homes, in their work, in their families. It was a world where rituals of care and pride existed alongside the harsh realities of life, where the act of combing one's hair could stir such strong feelings in a priest, where a simple shared bath could separate two worlds. As we move forward, let's step into the Viking longhouse, where the world was built not just on fierce strength, but on shared warmth, on care, and on the constant rhythm of daily life. This was a world full of ordinary people, and yet, even in their quiet moments, they shaped the world around them. The first light of day begins to rise over the Viking settlement. It's still early, and the sky is a soft grey, just beginning to lighten. The air is crisp, with a bite of cold that lingers from the night. The sea, which stretches endlessly along the shore, is calm, but you can hear its rhythm in the distance, the gentle waves lapping against the rocky coastline. The village itself is small, nestled between the sea and the dense forests that seem to stretch on forever. The ground is soft with dew, the earth rich and dark beneath the feet. The Vikings' world is one of contrasts, the harshness of the northern cold against the warmth of the longhouses, the quiet stillness of the forests against the movement of the sea. It is a world built on both the land and the water. The villages, like this one, are settled along the coast, where the Vikings can fish, trade, and travel. The longhouses are built using the timber from the forests nearby. These houses are the backbone of Viking life. Dark, simple, yet sturdy, providing shelter from the cold and protection from the elements. The settlement you're in is a place of work, family, and community. The longhouses are clustered together, and each house is home to a family, or sometimes more than one. These houses are made of timber, with thatched roofs, and the walls are often covered in skins from animals that the Vikings have hunted or raised. Inside there is warmth, not only from the fire, but from the shared effort of everyone living in the longhouse. The hearth in the middle of the room is where the family gathers, where meals are prepared, where stories are told, and where the community comes together to keep the fire alive. In the early morning, the first sounds you hear are the calls of seabirds overhead. The air is filled with their sharp cries as they circle the sky above the village. You can hear the sound of women working near the river, washing clothes in the cold, clear water. The village is waking, and the rhythms of daily life begin to unfold. You can hear the creak of the doors opening, the low murmur of voices, and the soft thud of footsteps as everyone starts their day. The land around the settlement is a mix of rocky coastline and dense, wild forests. The trees are tall and old, their roots deep in the earth, and the Vikings know the forest like the back of their hand. They rely on the forest for many things: wood for building, fuel for the fire, and animals for hunting. The Vikings are skilled hunters, and their relationship with the land is one of respect. They take only what they need, and they know the land well enough to know where to hunt, where to gather food, and where to find what they need to survive. The forest is alive with the sounds of wildlife, birds singing, the rustle of leaves as small animals scurry through the underbrush, and the occasional crack of a branch as something larger moves through the trees. The air is thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. In the distance, you can hear the low growl of a river, rushing over the rocks as it flows toward the sea. The forest feels alive, almost as if it's a part of the settlement, its trees and animals providing for the people who live here. Yet, despite the closeness of the land, it is the sea that is the lifeblood of the Vikings. The settlement sits on the edge of the water, and the sea provides them with much of what they need to survive. The sea isn't just a source of food, it's a highway connecting the Vikings to the wider world. The longships are the vessels that allow them to travel, to trade, and to raid. These ships are more than just transportation. They are a symbol of Viking strength, of their power on the seas. The longships are sleek and fast, built to glide smoothly over the water, their oars pulling through the waves as they cut a path across the sea. The sound of the sea is constant. The waves crash against the shore, a steady rhythm that echoes in the background of Viking life. The scent of salt water fills the air, mingling with the smells of smoke from the hearth and the earthiness of the forest. In the distance, you can hear the creaking of a longship as it's readied for the day's journey. The oars dip into the water with a soft splash, and the sails are unfurled, catching the wind as the boat begins to drift toward the open water. Life in the settlement is dictated by the rhythm of the land and the sea. The Vikings work in a constant cycle, working the land, tending to animals, fishing, trading, and for some, journeying out on raids or long voyages. The daily routines are set, steady, and predictable. Women rise early, tending to the hearth, preparing the food for the day, spinning wool, and weaving cloth. Children wake with the first light, eager to help with whatever tasks they can. They fetch water, gather firewood, and play in the open spaces between the longhouses. Their laughter is a constant presence in the village, a reminder of the joy that can still be found, even in the midst of hard work. The men of the village are often in the fields, working the land, planting crops like barley, oats, and rye. They raise animals, cattle, sheep, and goats, providing meat, milk, and wool. Some of the men are craftsmen, making tools, weapons, and boats. Their hands are strong, calloused from the constant work, but their eyes are sharp, focused on the task at hand. They are skilled at what they do, whether it's working with wood, metal, or leather. Trade is an important part of Viking life. Hedeby, one of the largest trading towns in Viking Scandinavia, is a hub where goods from across the known world are exchanged. Here, Vikings trade with merchants from the east, south, and west, bringing goods like amber, furs, and weapons to exchange for luxury items like silk, spices, and wine. The town is alive with activity. The streets are filled with people shouting over the noise of haggling, the clink of coins exchanging hands, and the creak of wooden carts piled high with goods. The air is thick with the scent of fish, salt, and the fires burning in the marketplace. The Vikings are also skilled traders, and they know the value of a good deal. They trade not just for goods, but for information, for alliances, and for the opportunity to expand their world beyond their shores. The longships, which were once used for raiding, are now used for trade and exploration. These ships are the key to the Viking way of life. Without them, their world would be much smaller. But with them, the world is open to them, full of possibility and opportunity. And yet, despite the vastness of the world, Viking life is still grounded in the local community. The settlement is where people live, work, and raise their families. It is a place of support, of shared labor, and of mutual care. Each person plays a part, and the success of the community depends on everyone working together. The bonds of family and kinship are strong. The land and the sea provide, but it is the people who make the village what it is. As the day moves forward, the sun climbs higher in the sky, and the sounds of the village grow louder. The rhythmic clink of a blacksmith hammering metal, the low murmur of voices in the longhouses, the laughter of children playing in the dirt. All of these sounds blend together into the hum of Viking life. It's a life defined by the land and the sea, by hard work and shared responsibility. It is a life that is tough, but it is also rich, full of moments of quiet joy and connection. And so, in this world, we begin to see that Viking life is not just about raiding and war. It is about survival, yes, but it is also about living, about finding meaning in the simple, everyday moments. It is a life of routine, of family, of work and rest, of love and loss. It is a world where the sea and the land provide everything, but the community gives it meaning. The cold of the early morning has settled in, the shadows of the longhouses stretching across the ground. The sun is just beginning to rise, casting a pale light across the Viking settlement. It's a quiet, still moment, just before the day fully begins. The air is crisp, filled with the sharp bite of the northern wind, carrying the scent of the sea. The ground is soft with dew, the earth cool beneath bare feet. The cold, stone floor of the longhouse is a reminder that the warmth of the hearth is what keeps everything alive, and you can feel the chill creeping up from the ground as you start to wake. In the longhouse, The fire is still burning, low and steady. The first to stir are often the women in the house, rising early to tend to the fire. The flickering light of the hearth dances softly across the rough-hewn walls. The smoke hole above the fire lets the rising warmth escape, but it's still cool near the floor. A few early risers move slowly, their feet touching the cold floor, padding softly as they get to work. It's still dark outside, the sky only beginning to lighten. The shadows of the night are still present in the corners of the house, but the fire's glow gives the space a gentle warmth. A woman wakes quietly, moving through the longhouse with practiced steps. She reaches for the small pile of firewood near the hearth, placing a fresh log on the fire. It crackles in response, the warmth slowly spreading outwards. The warmth of the fire feels like an anchor in the otherwise cool morning air. The flicker of flames casts long shadows across the room, and the smell of burning wood fills the space. The household slowly comes to life. The sounds of movement, soft footsteps, the faint creak of wooden beams, and the occasional rattle of pots and tools fill the air. The children start to wake too, the younger ones curling up in the warmth of their blankets, reluctant to leave the comfort of sleep. But the older children rise, eager to help with whatever small tasks are needed. Their feet make soft thuds against the wooden floor, and their eyes are still heavy with sleep. They stretch their limbs as they begin to take their place in the morning rhythm. Outside, the first light of day is spilling over the horizon. The longhouses, made of timber and covered in thatched roofs, stand like sentinels in the cool morning air. The forest looms just beyond the settlement, tall trees reaching up toward the sky, their leaves damp with the morning dew. The scent of the earth, wet and fresh, is thick in the air. The world beyond the longhouse is still, the silence of the early hours broken only by the sound of the wind through the trees. There's a brief moment where everything feels calm, as if the world is holding its breath, waiting for the day to unfold. Then, the rhythm of morning begins to settle into place. The first sounds of life emerge, low murmurs, the sound of the fire crackling, the distant rustle of animals stirring in their pens. A dog outside barks, its voice cutting through the quiet. The wind picks up, carrying with it the sound of the waves crashing against the shore. The village by the sea is beginning to stir, and with it, the Vikings who call it home. The first task of the morning, as always, is to feed the fire. The warmth of the hearth is what keeps the house alive. It's the heart of the longhouse, the center of life. Without it, the cold would seep in too quickly, and the house would be nothing more than a cold, empty shell. The fire is sacred, and tending to it is a task that's passed down through the generations. It's not a large fire, but it's enough to keep the house warm, enough to cook the meals, enough to keep the dark away. Each family member has their role to play in the morning ritual, and it starts with the fire. Next comes the water. One of the children, usually the older ones, is tasked with fetching the water. It's a simple, repetitive task, but it's essential. The water is gathered in large wooden buckets, carried from the nearby stream or well, depending on where the village is situated. It's not a pleasant task, not in the cold, damp morning air, but it's necessary. The child must leave the warmth of the longhouse, stepping out into the chill of the morning. The ground is wet, the cold pressing in from all sides. The child walks down the narrow path to the well, their breath visible in the air as they make their way to the water. At the well, the task is simple. Draw the water, fill the bucket, and return. But the water is cold, the well is deep, and the task is never easy. The child lowers the bucket, feeling the cool, damp rope slip through their hands as they pull it back up, filled with the cold liquid that will be used for cooking, washing, and drinking. The sound of the water splashing fills the morning air, and for a brief moment, everything is calm. The child, with a heavy bucket in hand, walks back toward the longhouse, the weight of the water making each step slower. Inside the longhouse, the family begins to wake in earnest. The smell of bread baking rises in the air. The women are busy in the corner of the house, kneading dough and preparing food. The smell of barley bread, mixed with the earthy scent of the fire, fills the air. Some of the children are already at work, helping where they can, fetching firewood, stacking the wool, or setting the table for breakfast. By now, the sun is starting to rise fully, its pale light spilling over the village. The villagers are beginning to gather outside. The sounds of the village are growing louder now, voices calling to one another, the clattering of tools, the creak of wooden carts, and the low murmur of the village slowly waking up. The fishermen are preparing their boats for the day's catch. The farmers are already heading toward the fields, and the men begin their work, the familiar rhythm of their labor filling the air. But the morning still holds. Its calmness still carries its quiet serenity. Even as the day grows busier, there's something sacred in the first few hours of light. The fire keeps burning, the water is fetched, the bread rises, and for a few moments, everything feels like it should, grounded, simple, and steady. The work will come soon enough. The day will be long. But for now, there is peace. Inside the longhouse, the quiet of the morning still lingers. The hearth crackles softly. The first light of the day is spilling across the floor, casting long shadows across the room. The warmth of the fire has filled the space, and the first meal of the day is being prepared. There's no rush, no hurry. Everyone has their part to play, and the day is unfolding in its familiar pattern. As the morning stretches on, more people are awake, and the longhouse begins to fill with life. The children are playing now, their laughter ringing out as they run through the village. The women continue their work, and the men head out to the fields or the sea. The day has begun, but it has begun gently, in its own time. In the steady rhythm of Viking life, the morning is the quiet heartbeat of the day. It's the time when everything comes together. The fire, the water, the food. It's the start of a day that will bring both work and reward. But for now, it's a time to breathe, to begin, and to feel the warmth of the world before it gets too busy. And just as the day will unfold in its familiar way, so too does the rhythm of Viking life continue. Ever constant, ever steady. The steady rhythm of life in a Viking village is marked by work. It's a rhythm that fills the hours from dawn until the last light of evening fades from the sky. The first tasks of the day have been done. The fire stoked, the water fetched, the bread rising. And now the real labor begins. The chores are simple, repetitive, necessary. And like the longhouses themselves, the work is built to last. Outside, the morning has fully arrived, and the village begins to come alive with purpose. You can hear the hum of activity from every corner, the creak of wooden carts, the steady thud of a hammer on metal, the sound of oxen pulling plows across the field. Each task, each movement, contributes to the smooth functioning of the village. The work is not easy, but it's steady. It's a work that holds the community together. For the farmer, the day begins with the livestock. The animals must be tended to, fed, watered, and if necessary, moved from one pen to another. The fields are calling too. It's time to work the soil, to plant or harvest, depending on the season. The farmer steps out of the longhouse, boots crunching in the early morning frost, and walks toward the pasture. The cows low softly, and the sound of their hooves can be heard as they shuffle about. The farmer moves with purpose, knowing what needs to be done, and does it without hurry. There's no need to rush. The rhythm of life is in the work, in the steady repetition of each task. The tools of the trade are simple: wooden pitchforks, iron plows, and handcrafted wooden carts. The work is repetitive, but it's necessary. The farmer checks the fence posts to make sure they're sturdy, moves the animals to fresh grass, and then heads out to the field. The soil is rich, but it requires effort. The farmer uses a simple plow to turn the earth, working with the oxen to break the soil, making it ready for planting. The air is fresh and cool, and you can see the farmer's breath in the morning air. The steady creak of the plow cutting through the soil, the rhythmic sound of the oxen's hooves, all blend together into a peaceful, hypnotic sound. The work in the fields isn't just about survival, it's about connection. The Viking farmer knows the land intimately. They know where to plant the barley, where the soil is richest, and when to harvest. It's a relationship that's built over years, each season teaching them more, each crop adding to their knowledge. The land is their partner, and they treat it with the care it deserves. Not far from the fields, the blacksmith is busy at work, the rhythmic hammering of metal ringing through the air. The forge burns brightly, its heat visible even from a distance, casting a golden glow on the blacksmith's skin. The tools in his hands are simple, but they are forged with skill and care. Iron is shaped and sharpened, turned into the tools and weapons that will sustain the community. The anvil rings out with each strike, and the sweat of the blacksmith's brow mixes with the heat from the forge. The work is grueling, but it's steady. It's the work of creation, transforming raw material into something useful. It's hard, but the blacksmith finds a quiet satisfaction in it. Beside the forge, the shipbuilder's work continues. The longships, those graceful, powerful vessels that carry the Vikings across the seas, are being prepared for their next journey. The shipbuilder works slowly, carefully, every stroke of his chisel forming a piece of the ship's hull. The wood is rough at first, but under the builder's hands, it takes shape. The ship will be sleek, fast and strong, capable of withstanding the rough seas they'll navigate. It's a slow process, the shipbuilder moving with purpose, checking the lines of the boat, smoothing the wood, fitting the pieces together. There's no rush here. The shipbuilder knows that the ship must be perfect if it's to carry the Vikings safely across the seas. The work continues throughout the day. Some will gather firewood, others will repair tools or mend nets for fishing. The women are busy as well, spinning wool, weaving cloth, preparing food for the day's meals. The children help where they can, fetching water, feeding the chickens, carrying messages between the houses. The work is steady, but it is never overwhelming. Everyone has their role to play, and the work feels like a natural part of life. It's a balance, a rhythm that has been passed down through generations. The labor is grueling, to be sure, but it is a labor of necessity. It is the kind of work that keeps the Viking community going. It feeds the people, it sustains the village, and it allows the Vikings to thrive. But the work is not just about survival. It's about pride. The farmer takes pride in the crops they grow. The blacksmith takes pride in the weapons they create. The shipbuilder takes pride in the ships they craft. It's work that connects them to their history, their community, and their land. Each task, no matter how simple, has meaning. The work is woven into the fabric of Viking life. The long days of labor are marked by the rhythm of the land, the sea, and the seasons. It's work that requires patience, skill, and care. But the reward is in the steady progress, the land cultivated, the animals fed, the ship built, the weapons forged. Even as the work continues, the rhythms of the day start to slow. The first round of tasks is finished, and the workers gather together for a break. The longhouse is filled with the smells of food being prepared, bread, cheese, and smoked meat, all cooking over the fire. The scent of warm bread fills the air, mingling with the smell of wood smoke and the fresh earthiness of the outside world. The fire crackles gently, casting a soft glow in the dimming light. As the day winds down, the work slows, and the focus shifts from labor to rest. The Viking day, filled with toil, gradually transitions into the quieter evening hours. The fire is stoked once more, the tools are set aside, and the workers settle into their places around the hearth. The quiet of the evening, after a hard day's work, is a time for family, for food, for connection. The work of the Vikings is not just about survival, it's about living. It's about creating, building, and connecting with the world around them. Through their labor, the Vikings ensure that their communities thrive, that their families are provided for, and that their legacy endures. It's not the work of one person, but the work of many, each playing their part in the larger rhythm of life. As the sun sinks lower in the sky, the heat of the day begins to fade and the air cools. Inside the longhouse, the hearth still burns brightly, casting a golden glow over the room. The smell of freshly baked bread, of herbs simmering in stew, and of meat roasting fills the air. The evening is approaching, and with it, the time for the most comforting part of the day, the meal. Food is a vital part of Viking life. It is both a necessity and a source of comfort, a way to nourish both body and spirit. The Viking table is simple but full of sustenance. Each meal is a careful balance of what the land, sea, and animals provide. Bread is often the cornerstone of the meal, baked from barley or rye. It's thick and hearty, meant to fill the belly after a day of hard work. Sometimes the bread is flat, sometimes it's dense, but always it's comforting, a staple that can be paired with just about anything. The Vikings know how to make the most of what they have, and their bread is the result of generations of practice. Alongside the bread is porridge, often made from oats or barley. This porridge is thick, the grains soft but hearty, and served with honey or berries when available. On especially cold mornings, a warm bowl of porridge might be the first meal of the day. In the evening, it's a comforting side to the main dishes, a reminder of the cycle of the seasons and the rhythms of the farm. It's not glamorous, but it's always filling, always satisfying. The Vikings, being near the sea, rely heavily on fish. Fish is often the centerpiece of their meals. Depending on the season, they may eat herring, cod, or salmon. Fish, once caught, is either salted to preserve it for the winter months or smoked over the fire, giving it a deep, rich flavor. Fish is often prepared in stews or baked with herbs, sometimes served with onions or root vegetables that have been dug from the soil. It's a dish that ties the Vikings to the sea, a reminder of their connection to the water that surrounds them. For those who are fortunate enough to own livestock, meat is also a central part of the Viking diet. Cattle, goats, and pigs are raised for both their meat and their milk. Meat is often roasted over the open flame or boiled in a stew. The smell of roasting meat fills the air as the evening meal is prepared. The crackle of the fire blends with the soft murmur of conversation as the family gathers around the hearth. Once the meal is prepared, it's time for the family to come together. The table is set simply: wooden bowls, rough-hewn spoons, and mugs for drinking. There's no formality to the setting. This is about sustenance, about coming together after a long day of work. The table is long, wide enough for the whole family to sit around, and maybe a few neighbors or visitors as well. In Viking homes, there's always room for more, especially if there's food to share. As a family sits together, the atmosphere is warm and inviting. The fire crackles softly, its light dancing across the faces of those gathered. The first to sit are usually the parents or the elder members of the household. They are the ones who worked hardest during the day, tending the fire, preparing the food, making sure everything is ready. Now they sit down with a sense of relief, knowing that the work for the day is done. The younger children, eager to eat, quickly take their places. They're not the first to sit, but they are the most excited. Their eyes are wide as they look at the meal laid out before them, waiting for the signal to begin. The quiet anticipation is almost tangible, the unspoken ritual of the evening meal drawing them closer together as a family. Once everyone is seated, the meal begins. The bread is broken, the stew ladled out, and the meat carved. The food is passed around the table, each person taking what they need, filling their bowls and mugs. It's a communal act, one that is not rushed. This is a time to sit together, to share not only food, but stories as well. The rhythm of mealtime is peaceful, almost meditative. There's no hurry to finish. The family takes their time, enjoying the warmth of the meal and the company of those around them. The mealtime is not just about food, it's about connection. After a long day of work, there is something comforting about gathering around the table with those you love, knowing that you're all part of something larger than yourself. The family is a unit, a community, and mealtime is a time when that bond is most clearly felt. The eldest member of the family might share a story of the old days, perhaps a tale of their own childhood, of ancestors long gone. The younger ones might listen intently, hanging on every word. There are always stories, tales of gods, of journeys, of adventures, and the evening meal is the perfect time to pass them down. In Viking culture, food is often shared with guests, and a meal can become a moment of hospitality. If a stranger arrives at the door, they are welcome to join in the meal. It's part of the culture, part of the Viking way of life. The idea that no one should go hungry, that food should be shared freely. This is a society built on the idea of mutual aid, where people look out for one another, even if they're strangers. And so, the evening meal passes in its own rhythm. There is laughter, conversation, and the sounds of contentment. The last piece of bread is passed around, and the bowls are emptied. The meal may end with a simple prayer of thanks, an acknowledgement to the gods for the food that has been provided. In some households, a small toast is made to the gods or ancestors, honoring the people who came before and paved the way for the life they now live. Once the meal has finished, the table is cleared, but the evening isn't over yet. There's always a moment after the meal when the family settles in. The fire is still burning, and the shadows in the longhouse grow longer as the light fades. People might sit in the warmth of the fire, their bellies full, their hands resting in their laps. This is the time for quiet reflection, for sitting together in peace. Some may clean the dishes or tidy the house, but the pace slows. The hard work of the day is behind them, and there's a sense of calm in the air. Children might run off to play, and adults might settle into a quieter, more comfortable space. Perhaps there's more storytelling, or maybe a song is sung to pass the time. The evening wears on, the fire crackling in the background, the last embers glowing warmly. The village outside is quiet now, the dark settling over the land. Inside the longhouse, the family remains gathered, content, and together. The meal has nourished them, but it's the time shared around the table, the quiet moments spent in each other's company that truly sustains them. And as the evening fades into night, the warmth of the fire and the comfort of food linger in the longhouse. The work is done, the stories have been told, and the family settles in for a quiet, peaceful night. The day has come full circle, and another will begin soon. But for now, there is peace, there is rest, and there is the shared bond of a meal that unites them all. The fire in the longhouse continues to burn steadily, casting soft shadows on the walls. A woman sits near the hearth, combing her hair with slow, deliberate strokes. The rhythmic motion of the comb moving through her long strands is calming. Her face is illuminated by the warm glow of the fire, her features softened by the flickering light. The comb is simple, made from bone or wood, its teeth worn smooth from years of use. As she works, she reflects on the importance of this ritual, a moment of care amidst the demands of the day. Personal grooming in Viking society wasn't just a matter of vanity. It was a part of daily life, a routine that spoke to the Vikings' desire for cleanliness and order. While the Vikings may have been known for their fierceness in battle, they were also a people who cared deeply about their appearance, at least when it came to the essentials. Hygiene, though simple by modern standards, was an important part of Viking life. They bathed regularly, often once a week, a luxury that many of their neighbors didn't share. This habit of bathing, coupled with their attention to grooming, helped set the Vikings apart from other cultures of the time. The Vikings were not a dirty people, as some have mistakenly believed. They washed their faces, combed their hair, and maintained a basic level of cleanliness. It was a practical matter. Bathing in cold water, either from a stream or a river, was not a pleasurable act. It was necessary. The Vikings knew that cleanliness helped keep them healthy. The simple act of bathing, combined with regular grooming, allowed them to maintain their health in a world where illness was common and where long winters brought the threat of disease. Grooming was not just about hygiene. it was also about social presentation. Vikings took pride in how they looked. Their hair was often braided or styled with care. Men and women alike might comb their hair with careful attention, not just for cleanliness, but for personal appearance. A well-groomed Viking was seen as strong and capable. Appearance was an indicator of status and health. Vikings were not just warriors. They were farmers, craftsmen, traders, and parents. How they presented themselves to others was a reflection of their role in society. Beyond personal grooming, the Vikings had a deep respect for their bodies and the care they required. It wasn't just about washing or combing hair. It was about healing, about maintaining the body so that it could continue to perform its daily tasks. Viking medicine, while basic, was grounded in natural remedies. They had a wealth of knowledge about herbs, plants, and the natural world around them. Elderly women and wise men were often the keepers of this knowledge, their hands skilled in making simple yet effective salves, tinctures, and poultices. The Vikings used herbs like willow bark to ease pain, yarrow for wounds, and elderberry to fight off illness. These plants, gathered in the wild, were sometimes boiled or steeped to create medicines that could soothe and heal. For cuts and bruises, there were herbal remedies to help the body mend. For fevers or aches, a simple concoction of herbs might be brewed, its warmth offering comfort as it was consumed. The medical knowledge was passed down through generations, a practical, no-nonsense approach to the challenges of illness. Still, Viking medicine had its limits. There were no doctors as we understand them today, and many illnesses or injuries could not be healed with herbs alone. If someone was severely injured, whether in battle or in everyday life, their chances of survival depended largely on their body's ability to heal on its own. There were few treatments for broken bones beyond splints, and infections were often a silent threat. But despite these limitations, the Vikings did what they could. They knew the land, the plants, and the rhythms of life, and they used that knowledge to care for their bodies as best as they could. When it came to clothing, the Vikings had a practical approach. Their clothing was made from the resources available to them: wool from their sheep, linen from flax, leather from animals they hunted. Woolen tunics and cloaks kept the Vikings warm in the harsh winters, while leather shoes helped protect their feet from the cold, wet ground. Their clothing was simple but functional, built for work and travel. It was made to last, to endure the elements, and to provide protection during the long months when the cold winds blew and the snow piled high. Despite the ruggedness of their clothing and daily lives, the Vikings understood the importance of warmth and comfort. At the end of a long day, after the work was done and the evening meal shared, the warmth of the fire was a welcome relief. People would gather around the hearth, their bodies tired but nourished, their faces illuminated by the flickering light. The stillness of the longhouse would settle in, the sound of the fire crackling the only noise in the room. People would remove their shoes and cloaks, folding them neatly in the corner, and allow the warmth of the fire to ease their tired muscles. As the night stretched on, the work of the day would give way to rest. The Vikings, despite their tough lives, understood the importance of recovery. After a day of labor, whether in the fields, at sea, or at the forge, rest was essential. The body needed sleep to repair itself, to recover from the physical demands of daily life. And so, the family would settle down for the night, the flicker of the fire the only light in the room. They would sleep soundly, knowing that tomorrow would bring more work, but also more moments of care, of connection, and of comfort. Even in their more difficult moments, whether struggling with illness, injury, or fatigue, the Vikings knew how to care for their bodies, their routines of hygiene, their use of herbal remedies, and their simple but effective clothing all worked together to help them survive and thrive in a challenging world. And as they settled into the warmth of their homes, their bodies rested, knowing that another day of work, of care, and of life would come soon enough. In the quiet moments of the evening, after the work of the day is done, the body is allowed to rest. The fire continues to burn softly, the room grows still, and the rhythms of the Viking world shift from labor to relaxation. The work of the body is complete, but the care of it and the rest it so desperately needs remains. The evening settles in slowly, the shadows growing longer as the sun dips below the horizon. Inside the longhouse, the fire burns bright, its warmth wrapping around the room like a gentle embrace. The flickering light dances on the walls, casting soft, shifting shadows. A mother sits by the hearth, cradling her young child in her arms. Her voice, low and soothing, hums a lullaby, a song passed down through generations. The child's eyelids flutter with the pull of sleep, the gentle sound of her mother's voice lulling him into peaceful rest. It's a quiet moment, one of tenderness and calm, and it's in these moments that the bonds of family are most clearly felt. The Viking world, for all its hardships, was a world rooted in connection, connections that were formed and strengthened through love, care, and mutual support. In this household, as in many others, the family is everything. Viking society was built on strong familial ties. The extended family was often the core of Viking life, with several generations living together in one longhouse. Parents, children, grandparents, and sometimes uncles, aunts, cousins, and close friends all shared space in the same home. The bonds of kinship were sacred, providing a foundation for survival in a world where the harshness of the land and sea could turn against you in an instant. The father, perhaps weary from the work of the day, sits beside the hearth, his rough hands resting in his lap as he watches his family. His face is etched with the lines of hard labor, but his eyes are soft as they rest on his children. The Viking father was the protector, the provider, and the leader of the family. But he was also a teacher, a storyteller, and a source of comfort. His children looked to him not just for physical protection, but for guidance, for the wisdom of life that only a parent can impart. The bond between parents and children in Viking society was crucial. Children were valued members of the family, raised with love and care, even though their lives would be marked by hard work from an early age. They learned from their parents, absorbing the skills necessary for survival: how to fish, how to tend to animals, how to build, how to craft. But beyond these practical lessons, the emotional connections between parents and children ran deep. The bond of love and care was central to the family's well-being. Marriage, too, was a cornerstone of Viking society. The relationship between husband and wife was built on mutual respect, shared labor, and love. Marriage wasn't always about romantic love in the modern sense, but it was about partnership, trust, and responsibility. The Viking wife played an essential role in managing the household, overseeing the care of children, and handling the many tasks that came with maintaining a home. Her work was as critical to the family's success as her husband's. In return, the Viking husband was expected to provide for the family, protect them, and be a steadfast partner in all things. Yet, the bonds of family extended beyond blood relations. The Vikings were also deeply connected to their neighbors, friends, and clans. These connections were often just as strong, as they were bound by shared experiences, trade, and loyalty. A Viking could rely on their extended family and friends for support, particularly in times of hardship. This bond between clans was often celebrated in feasts, where men and women would come together to share food, drink, and stories. The value of friendship and social ties was not to be underestimated. In a world where the weather could be unpredictable and raiders or enemy tribes might attack, the strength of a community was essential. Neighbors helped each other in building homes, tending to the fields, and protecting each other in times of danger. They celebrated together, mourned together, and cared for one another in times of illness or hardship. These bonds were often formalized through oaths of loyalty, where individuals swore loyalty to each other and to their families, solidifying relationships that lasted a lifetime. In the evenings, when the work of the day was done, the Viking household would often come together to share stories. The hearth, always the center of the home, was also the place where tales of gods and heroes were told. The older generations would pass down the legends, stories of Odin, Thor, and Freya, tales of great warriors, legendary battles, and distant lands. These stories weren't just entertainment. They were a way of preserving history, of teaching the next generation about their roots, their ancestors, and the values that held their society together. Around the fire, a Viking father might tell his children about the gods who watched over them, how they had shaped the world and the lives of their people. A grandmother might speak of her own childhood, recounting the lessons she had learned from her mother. And in these quiet moments of storytelling, the bonds between the generations grew stronger. It wasn't just about listening. It was about participating in something larger than oneself. The stories carried the weight of generations, a reminder that the family, the community, and the culture were all connected through time. For the Viking warrior, the bonds of family and friendship were just as important as their martial strength. The bonds formed in battle, forged through shared struggles and hardships, were often lifelong. Warriors fought side by side, not just for victory, but for the sake of each other's survival. Loyalty to one's comrades was paramount. The Viking berserker, known for their fearsome rage in battle, was equally devoted to the protection of their kin. In battle, as in life, the Viking warrior was not alone. They fought as a family, united in purpose, in cause, and in care. At the same time, Viking society understood the importance of community. No one was truly alone in their struggles. Even in times of grief or loss, there was the support of family and friends. The rituals surrounding death were steeped in respect for the bonds that had been forged in life. Vikings had deep respect for their ancestors, and this respect was shown in their burial rites and funeral feasts. The dead were honored, and their memory was preserved through stories, just as the living were honored in the daily rituals of care and love. As the evening draws to a close, the longhouse settles into a quiet, comfortable silence. The children sleep soundly, their bodies warm under woolen blankets. The parents, weary from the day's work, rest beside the hearth. The fire's glow is soft, and the smell of burning wood mingles with the lingering scent of food. The bonds of family, of love, care, and shared responsibility hold the household together. The warmth of the longhouse, the care of those around them, and the knowledge that tomorrow will bring more work, more stories, and more moments of connection make the Vikings feel safe and secure. They are not alone in this world. They are part of something larger, something that binds them to each other, to the land, and to the past. The bonds of family, friendship, and community give the Viking world its strength. In a harsh land, in a time when survival often depended on one's ability to care for and rely on others, these bonds are what matter most. And so, the Viking world is held together by love. Love for the land, for the gods, for the family, and for the people who share in the struggle to live. The sun has dipped below the horizon, and the longhouse is bathed in the soft glow of the hearth. Outside, the cool night air drifts in, and the shadows grow longer. The fire crackles, casting warm light on the faces gathered around the hearth. But beyond this light, beyond the warmth of the home, there is a world full of mystery and belief, a world where the gods walk among the people, where fate guides their lives, and where the unseen forces of nature shape everything. The Vikings, fierce and proud, were also a deeply spiritual people. Their lives were intricately tied to the gods and the forces of nature. Every part of their day was touched by their beliefs, from the moment they woke to the moment they fell asleep. The gods were present in the world around them, in the wind that ruffled their hair, in the sea that provided food and trade, and in the thunder that shook the skies. At the center of Viking spirituality were the gods themselves. Odin, the All-Father, was the god of wisdom, war, and death. Thor, his mighty son, was the god of thunder and protector of the people. Freya, the goddess of love and fertility, held dominion over both the heavens and the afterlife. These gods, and many others, were not distant ethereal beings. They were active participants in the world of the living, involved in the struggles and triumphs of the people. The Viking worldview was rooted in a sense of destiny, shaped by the belief that the gods had a hand in every part of life. They believed that everything, from the rise of the sun to the course of a battle, was woven into a tapestry of fate. The Norns, three powerful beings who controlled the fate of gods and men alike, spun the threads of each individual's life, deciding who would live and who would die, who would be victorious and who would fall. The Vikings knew that their lives were bound to these forces, but they also believed in their ability to shape their destiny through their actions, their bravery, and their devotion to the gods. Rituals and sacrifices played a central role in Viking belief. The Vikings believed that in order to earn the favor of the gods, they had to offer sacrifices. Whether it was a prayer, an object, or in some cases an animal. These sacrifices were offered at sacred sites, such as groves or sacred trees, where the gods were thought to be closest. It was through these rituals that the Vikings maintained a relationship with the divine. They asked for favor before battle, for a good harvest, or for protection on long journeys. The gods were not to be taken lightly. They were powerful, unpredictable forces that could either bless or punish the people. The sacrifices were not just about appeasing the gods. They were also about reinforcing the connection between the physical and spiritual worlds. A sacrifice wasn't just a gift to the gods. It was a way for the Vikings to demonstrate their devotion and commitment. It was a way of honoring the gods for the protection and strength they provided, as well as acknowledging the forces beyond their control. A Viking warrior might make an offering before heading into battle, whispering a prayer to Odin for strength and wisdom, knowing that the outcome of the fight was in the hands of the gods. The Vikings believed that the gods were always watching. Their lives were an ongoing conversation with the divine, one that included prayers, offerings, and acts of devotion. Even in the quiet of the evening, as the family sat together around the hearth, the gods were still present in their minds. Their prayers and thoughts of the gods were never far away. They lived in a world where the sacred and the everyday were intimately connected, where the divine was not something far off, but something woven into the very fabric of life. The afterlife was another key aspect of Viking belief. The Vikings did not see death as an end, but as a passage into another realm. The afterlife for a Viking was often envisioned as a continuation of life, where warriors and heroes would be honored by the gods in the afterlife. The most famous of these afterlife realms was Valhalla, the great hall of Odin, where brave warriors who died in battle were welcomed. In Valhalla, the fallen warriors would feast, drink, and fight in preparation for the final battle at the end of the world, known as Ragnarok. Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, was a central part of Viking eschatology, a vision of the end of the world that would be marked by a final battle between the gods and the forces of chaos. The Viking warriors believed that they were fighting not just for glory, but for a place in Valhalla, where they would join Odin's army in the great fight at the end of time. It was a vision of honor, courage, and eternal reward. But there were other realms as well, like Hell, the realm ruled by the goddess of the same name, where those who died not in battle might end up. The Vikings believed in the influence of omens and signs that came from the gods and the natural world. A raven's flight, the patterns of the stars, the behavior of animals, all were seen as messages from the divine. The Vikings were deeply attuned to these omens, always watching for signs that would guide them through the day. If a raven flew west, it was an omen of success in battle. If the wind turned suddenly, it was a sign that the gods were displeased. The natural world was alive with signs and meanings, and the Vikings read these signs carefully, interpreting them to help guide their actions. The rituals that the Vikings performed, from prayers to sacrifices to the reading of omens, were part of a larger framework of belief that bound them together. The gods were central to everything they did, from farming to war to daily life. The Vikings believed that they were not alone in this world. They were surrounded by the presence of the gods, watching over them, guiding them, and sometimes punishing them. But in all of this, the Vikings maintained a deep respect for the gods, knowing that their lives were connected to something much larger than themselves. In the stillness of the evening, as the fire burns low, a Viking warrior might whisper a prayer to Odin or Thor, seeking guidance before a long journey or a battle. His voice is low, barely a murmur above the crackling of the fire. The world outside is dark, But in the quiet of the longhouse, there is a feeling of peace, of connection to something beyond the physical world. The gods are still there, watching, waiting, and guiding. And in this moment, the Viking feels that bond between the living and the divine. As the night deepens and the world outside grows still, the Viking closes his eyes, knowing that the gods are with him. The prayers have been said, the sacrifices made, and now it is time for rest. The journey ahead will be long, and the trials will be many, but in his heart, he carries the strength and the blessings of the gods. And as he drifts into sleep, the gods watch over him, guarding him, guiding him on his way. The day is drawing to a close. The fire in the longhouse still burns brightly, casting its soft glow over the room, but the shadows are growing longer. Outside, the last traces of daylight fade from the sky, and the world falls into the quiet embrace of night. The air cools, and the sounds of the village, once bustling with life, now fall silent. Inside, the longhouse is filled with the warmth of the fire, the flickering light reflecting on the faces of the family as they settle in for the evening. The routine of the day has ended. There are no more tasks to complete, no more work to be done. The fire has been tended to, the last bit of food has been eaten, and the children are resting, their small bodies tucked into their blankets by the hearth. The longhouse is quiet now, save for the gentle crackling of the fire and the soft murmurs of the parents as they prepare for the night. In Viking society, the evening was a time to slow down, to unwind, and to connect. The hard work of the day had come to an end, and now it was time to rest. There were no distractions, no bright lights or noises from the outside world. The quiet of the night enveloped the family, and the fire became the center of everything. It was the hearth that provided not just warmth, but comfort, security, and a sense of togetherness. The light from the flames flickered gently, casting soft, dancing shadows on the walls. The father rises slowly from his seat, his movements deliberate, not hurried. He makes his way to the door of the longhouse, checking the sturdy wooden latch to make sure it is secure for the night. Outside, the wind picks up slightly, but within the longhouse, the warmth is constant. He stands for a moment in the doorway, looking out over the dark landscape, his breath visible in the cool night air. The stars are bright overhead, their light a reminder of the vastness of the world beyond. But here, in the longhouse, everything feels small and safe. He steps back inside, closing the door softly behind him. The family gathers once more around the hearth, the quiet of the night settling around them. The children are already beginning to drift off, their eyes heavy with the pull of sleep. The mother moves to the bed, adjusting the furs and blankets, making sure everyone is warm and comfortable. There is a sense of peace in these small, simple tasks. They don't need to speak. The rhythm of the evening is known, familiar and soothing. The fire continues to burn, but its glow begins to soften as the embers slowly fade. The night is quiet. The only sounds now the occasional crack of wood in the fire and the gentle breathing of the family. The day is gone, and with it, the noise of the world. Now it is time for rest, for sleep, for the quiet of the night to take over. In the stillness, the thoughts of the day fade. The worries of work, the hustle of life outside, seem to drift away as the longhouse settles into darkness. The children sleep soundly, their small bodies curled up in the warmth of their blankets. The adults too begin to relax, their bodies tired from the work of the day. The firelight flickers one last time, casting soft, shifting shadows before it settles into a steady, calm burn. There is no rush now, no need to hurry. The world outside may be vast and unpredictable, but here, inside the longhouse, there is comfort, there is rest, and there is peace. The fire, though fading, is still there, an ever-present reminder of warmth and safety. The rhythmic crackling of the flames is the lullaby of the evening, the quiet soundtrack to the closing of the day. The air grows cooler still, and the quiet of the night deepens. As the night draws on, the Viking family sleeps, wrapped in the warmth of the fire and the security of each other's presence. The longhouse is still now, the sounds of the day long faded. The wind outside howls gently, but the walls of the longhouse are strong, holding back the cold. There is no noise here, no rush, no hurry. Only the steady warmth of the hearth, the stillness of the night, and the quiet peace of a well-earned rest. For the Vikings, the night was a time to rest their weary bodies, to lay down their tools and their burdens, and to be held in the embrace of family and the warmth of their home. The fire burned through the night, its flickering light a constant companion until the morning would come again. But for now, in the stillness of the longhouse, there is only peace. As the fire fades into embers and the night deepens, the quiet of the longhouse envelops all. There is nothing to do now, nothing more to worry about. The world outside is far away, and here, in this quiet place, the only thing that matters is the rest that comes with the end of the day. The shadows grow longer, the world outside grows still, and the Vikings sleep, wrapped in the comfort of their world, knowing that tomorrow will come with new tasks, new challenges, and new moments of peace. For now, though, it is time for rest. The night has settled in fully now. The fire in the hearth is a bed of glowing embers, the last remnants of the flames flickering softly in the darkened room. The warmth from the fire still lingers in the air, but the heat is fading, and the room begins to cool. Outside, the world is utterly still. The sounds of the day have quieted. No voices, no movement. The wind has died down, and the village is as quiet as it has ever been. The darkness outside is complete, the stars above providing the only light. Inside the longhouse, everything is peaceful. The family sleeps soundly, wrapped in the comfort of their blankets and the warmth of the fading fire. The rhythmic rise and fall of their breathing fills the silence, the stillness of the night stretching on. There are no more tasks to be done, no more words to be spoken. The world is at rest. The embers in the hearth flicker one last time, casting a soft, warm glow that dances across the walls. The fire is nearly out now, but its light is gentle, like a final embrace before the darkness takes over completely. The warmth is fading, and the shadows are growing deeper, but the longhouse remains a safe haven, a place of comfort in the midst of the vast, silent world outside. Outside, the night is silent but alive with the sounds of nature, the soft rustling of leaves in the trees, the distant call of an owl, the faint murmur of the sea. The landscape, so familiar during the day, has transformed. The village is hidden in darkness, but it is a stillness that feels natural, as if the entire world is pausing for rest, for renewal. Within the longhouse, the family sleeps. The fire, once full of life, now lies quietly in its final stages. Its glow is soft, like a whisper, and the heat it once gave now only lingers in the air. As the last of the warmth fades, the longhouse grows cooler, the air crisp with the quiet of night. The room is bathed in a soft darkness now, and the family remains nestled in their blankets. The silence of the night surrounding them. There is no rush, no need to move, no need to speak. The world is still. The night has taken over. The land outside is as quiet as the longhouse, the stillness wrapping itself around the village like a blanket. The trees sway gently in the night breeze, the moon hanging high above, casting pale light across the landscape. The sea, though always in motion, is calm tonight. Its waves lap softly against the shore, a quiet murmur in the distance. In the longhouse, the quiet is almost palpable. It's not an emptiness, but a deep, restful calm. The last bits of the day's fire burn out, leaving only the faintest glow behind. There is a stillness here, a peacefulness that fills the air. No more movement, no more words. The house, the village, the world outside, everything is wrapped in the embrace of the night. The sound of breath is all there remains, soft and steady, like the steady ticking of time. The world, for now, is at rest. There is nothing more to do, no more thoughts to think. The body and mind are allowed to sink into the stillness, to let go of the day and embrace the quiet that surrounds them. As the last of the embers die down, the longhouse grows darker, the shadows deepening. The world outside remains unchanged, quiet and still. The fire is gone, the last warmth fading into the cool night. The stars twinkle softly above, their distant light shining through the darkness. The moon's pale glow casts long shadows across the landscape, but the world is at peace. And in this peaceful silence, the Viking family sleeps. Their bodies rest, their minds quiet. They are surrounded by the silence of the night, embraced by the warmth that lingers, the stillness that is both peaceful and complete. The world outside remains untouched, as it has always been, full of mysteries and wonders, yet quiet in this moment. As the last remnants of the day slip away, the Viking family rests. There is no more work to be done, no more tasks to be completed. There is only sleep, only rest, only the comfort of knowing that tomorrow will come in its own time, with its own rhythms and tasks. But for now, in the quiet of the longhouse, there is nothing but peace. Pause. The longhouse is still. The embers in the fire are gone. The last of the warmth fades. The silence fills the room completely. Outside, the night stretches on, quiet and unbroken. The world outside is far away. For now, there is only rest,